Casting trees are used in the jewelry industry from small one-person operation to very large production jewelry companies. You can even preset your diamonds into the wax and cast with the diamonds already set. The pieces to be cast are mounted on the center rod, wax rod. So to create that, we use straws. So most of you will use a small or a medium straw. Simply add a little bit of silicone into the straw, block one end, and using a metal plate, push against the wax valve to fill up the straw. This will create the center of our tree, so the trunk, if you will. So let it cool for a few minutes, probably 5-10 minutes. After cooling, simply pinch one end to release the rod, the wax rod, and this is now our center of our tree. The waxes will be mounted onto this. This method also works well if you ever need to fill one of the bays. If one of the bays that you're about to use is not already filled with wax, you can take the metal plate and push against the wax release valve and fill up the bottom. There's a few different options with wax pen. There's this one here that has a control for the temperature and a very fine tip. Or another good economical solution is to buy a solder iron and plug it through a light dimmer. So you plug your iron through, and then the dimmer becomes your control for the temperature. These are a little bulkier, but you can file the tip with a file to create a fine point. If you filled up the base and now your base is the wax is shrunk and it's loose, you can use that solder iron, our new wax pen, and we can go around and solidify the wax button into the base, the rubber base. And now it's time to attach our center sprue to our base. At this point, we are not picking any base in particular. We are temporarily attaching our sprue to any base at all. It doesn't matter the size at this point. So attach your base by connecting both sides. So you melt the sprue and the bottom to connect them together. Both need to be connected. The flask also doesn't matter at this point. We don't need to worry about this for now. We are just going to attach our pieces first, and then we'll choose the right base and the right flask. If I have different sizes to attach on, different object of different sizes, I will attach the finest to the top and the bulkier at the bottom. Also, if any sprues have fallen off during unmolding your pieces, you can simply reattach the sprues on right now. For us, the pieces are all the same size, so it doesn't matter the order. So we start with one at the very top, attaching one to the very top of our long sprue. You can remove a little bit of your sprue that was injected. We don't need extra. And when doing a tree like this, you want to melt both ends together that are to be attached and let it solidify. After letting it solidify, then you can go back and touch up and make sure that you have a smooth connection. We don't want any bottleneck. So when the metal flows into the cavity, when the wax has been melted, we don't want any bottleneck. The order of how you put things is a little bit up to you. I'm trying to picture doing my investments, so I don't want my cavities to be filled with air bubbles. So I'm going to put my cavities going upwards. I need to cut my sprue on a little bit of an angle, so my piece is attached on an angle. We don't want pieces lying down horizontally because then the metal has to quickly turn around to fill up when the metal is going in. So we want the piece to have a nice slight angle. So I'm with my fingernails just cutting my sprue to give it that angle, and then I'm going to go and attach it. Again, to attach, you need to melt the two parts that are being attached together, put it together, hold until it solidifies, and then leave it alone before touching up. You have to let it cool before you go and touch it up and add wax all around. If you try to do it all at the same time, the piece keeps falling off. So while you wait, you're attaching another one. Same thing, melting the two, holding until it's staying, and then you go back and then you clean up your first one. If you try to do it all at once, it all gets melted together and it just falls off and it keeps on falling off, and you have to let it solidify. So attach one by melting the two sides that are coming together, let it solidify, and then go and touch up. You can use extra wax from the same wax, the injector, and add if needed. Again, you want a smooth connection, no bottleneck. So if you need to go upside down and add a little bit, that's fine. And we're going to keep on going with that same angle. The pieces can be very close together as long as they're not touching. Be careful not to create too thin of spacing, because the spacing will become investment. So you don't want to create investment that is so thin that it breaks as the metal shoots in full speed. So if possible, leave a little gap of at least 2 millimeters between pieces. And we keep going around and around, creating the tree, connecting our pieces, letting them cool, and coming back to them to touch them up after. This takes a little bit of know-how, it takes a little bit of practice, so take your time, plan ahead. You're not doing this half an hour before investing, you're doing this a couple of hours before investing. If your pieces are not fully connected, if you only melt around the sprue and not right through, it may fall off during investment. Sometimes I lift my base on an angle. It creates a little bit more space for my hand, and it's a little bit more convenient to keep on building the tree and rotating. And for this, my iron is set to about halfway up the dimmer. If you are attaching pieces that will not be a link and you don't need all of the components, you can just snap off what you don't need with your finger and even fill a hole, no problem, with this same method. So you take a little bit of extra wax, the same injecting wax, and you simply go and touch there and it'll fill, and this will need to be cleaned up in metal. This wax does not file well, so we try not to file or touch this wax too much, but the cleanup can be done in metal. And we're going to go and attach it with the same method, connecting everything fully. At the end, I do an inspection, making sure nothing is touching, making sure there's proper amount of wax flowing in nicely, smooth connections, scrape off anything you don't need, and then we're going to cut that center sprue about 15 millimeters lower than the last piece we added. Then you're going to gently take your tree and weigh the whole tree on a scale, being very precise. And then we fill out our casting sheets. So the regular casting sheet that you are comfortable with, hopefully, you fill it out and have it approved by an instructor. And now it's time to pick the right base and the right flask. We need about the size of a finger all the way around from the wax to the flask. So this one is correct. The first one was too big, the second one is perfect. Find the base that works with the correct flask. Pick a flask that is high enough so that the top of your wax has minimum 10 to 15 millimeters to the top of the flask. So now we attach exactly in the center of our correct base. We reattach, let it solidify, wait, touch up if needed. And I'm also making sure that the piece is very straight, the tree is very straight, not on an angle. If a piece falls off, better now than during investment. Reattach the piece to the sprue, let solidify, and then touch up. I need a nice little fillet around where I know that it's connecting. I'm inspecting again, making sure I have the size of a finger all around from the waxes to the flask, as well as 10 to 15 millimeters from the top of the wax to the top of the flask.